everyone says a lot hasn't changed with the iPhone 16 Pro. They call it an S-year upgrade. They say it's boring. They say it's the same phone as the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So why do I have more to say about the upgrades and feature changes that Apple has made with this iPhone than I've had to say compared to the past two iterations? Well, it's because that even though the outward design of the iPhone has been stagnant, Apple has revamped a lot of the unseen parts of the phone that make it one of the most competent iPhone upgrades since the iPhone 11 Pro. And yet, at the same time, I am more conflicted about how I feel about this particular iPhone than I have ever been before. Now, we all know Apple upgraded the durability of the iPhone this year, but it doesn't matter how durable they make it, you're always going to need a good case. And these Taurus O-Stand 360 Spin Fusion MagSafe cases, they're the one to get. I love the soft feel on these cases, which have a really seamless grip, and I'm a big fan of this Desert Dune Gold color to match my 16 Pro Max in Desert Titanium. And these Taurus cases offer full 360 protection with 4 corner airbags inside the case and elevated camera protection around the lens and a lip around the display to protect this from every drop. But what really sets the Taurus case apart from the typical smartphone case is this right here, this 360 spinning O-Stand. It is so great to be able to prop up your iPhone in either landscape or a vertical orientation, and I love it for watching YouTube videos or scrolling through my TikTok feed. And with the always-on display on the Pro models, it's just a very nice, pleasing way to display your phone, kind of like a desk clock. The ring even spins, which turns into a grip, and don't worry, there is of course a cutout for that new camera button. But hey, if you need even more protection and want to protect that big, beautiful iPhone display, check out their Taurus Glasgow X screen protectors or a plethora of other case options. And a shout out to this awesome super slim Taurus Mini Mag power bank, which can attach to the back of your iPhone 16 and keep it charged. To pick up a Taurus case or any of these cool accessories, check out the link in the description below, and thank you to Taurus for sponsoring this video. All right, now one thing I don't think is being talked about enough is the size increase that happened to both Pro models this year. It's not every year that Apple upgrades the screen sizes, and this Pro Max model now comes with a 6.9-inch display, while the smaller Pro gets an updated 6.3-inch display. Now, first things first, the 6.9-inch OLED display looks fantastic, and the front design of the iPhone has never been more premium with these ultra-thin bezels that almost make it look borderless. And I am still a huge fan of the titanium material and the matte sides that are easier to grip. I'm also really glad I decided to change it up a bit and get the Desert Titanium finish this year. Gold is not usually an option I pick, but I decided to get this goldish iPhone color and the gold Apple Watch Series 10, and I think they make a really nice looking pair, especially because the gold is a bit more muted and not as pronounced or as flashy as previous colors. It's subtle, it's not flashy. I think that's the Greg's Gadget style. Now, this is by far the biggest phone that I have ever owned, and it's a mixed bag for me. Now listen, I'll start with the good news. I'll be nice first, right? My favorite thing about using this big screen is that it does feel really nice to use when you're using it two-handed, and especially when you are viewing videos or photos and when you're editing them as well. It's really nice to have that big display. And it's also great to have it when you're playing games. The games themselves have never looked more impressive on an iPhone display, thanks to the A18 Pro chip, which offers better resolution and frame rates, especially on more demanding AAA level games, which launched last year on the 15 Pro. Games like Resident Evil 4 Remake recently launched on dedicated game consoles like the PlayStation 5, and they play pretty well on this device when you figure it's a phone, right? Like the Nintendo Switch, the most popular console in the entire world, can't play a lot of these games. Now, I'm also a fan that the bigger size Pro Max model gets the best battery life ever on an iPhone, and my results have been pretty good so far. I am a very, very, very heavy iPhone user. I probably shouldn't be on it all day, but I am. And sadly, I average like 8 hours of screen on time on a very heavy day, and the 16 Pro Max can get through those tougher days of use. In fact, if it wasn't for this boosted battery life, I don't think I would pick this over the regular 16 Pro this year, which I think has the best form factor with that big 6.3-inch display, but it still feels manageable in the hand, whereas the 16 Pro Max just feels unwieldy and large and heavier. And there's times where I question during this 2-week review period if I should just return it and switch to a regular size 16 Pro. And I have to be honest, even though I enjoy that larger display at times, if it wasn't for the battery life, I would definitely switch to the smaller 16 Pro. I even found that the large size hampers even the exclusive new feature brought over to the iPhone 16 models, the new camera control button. And in general, this new feature has been quite controversial, and I have to agree with a lot of the takes that are out there already. This button isn't perfect, and it is awkward to use at times, and it is slower to use than the just traditional iPhone touchscreen controls in the camera app. However, here is what I like about camera control. First of all, I do just like using it to launch the camera app. I know there's a lot of other gestures you can use. I know you can use lock screen apps, but having a hardware button hardwired to that area to just open the camera app makes that interaction always immediate and always present, where the other methods aren't present. They're locked behind software, they're locked behind the screen, and that is something I like about the camera button, just knowing anytime I press it, the camera app is going to open. The other thing I like about it, even though fiddling around with the settings and trying to change to different camera modes, like changing to zoom or changing to the exposure, are really awkward and I find slower and more imprecise than just using the touchscreen, it does at least enable you to access those controls as an option and switch between them when you're using the iPhone one-handed. But let's get back to the Pro Max specifically, because I said it was a weakness on this phone compared to the other models, and that's because I find using the camera button a little easier on the smaller 16 and the smaller 16 Pro model. The 16 Pro Max just feels really heavy. I feel like my thumb kind of gets cramped in this position, especially because the phone feels very top heavy when I'm using it. So I'm glad it's there. It's good in a pinch on the Pro Max, but mainly I'm just kind of using it for opening the camera app right now. And really, that's where I appreciate a lot of the advancements on the 16 Pro. As a creator, I like the workflows with the iPhone's camera system and the iPhone's microphone system, because those microphones are just so good this year that it actually makes using your phone to record video a really pleasing experience. You can get what I would call usable audio in most well-managed situations, and even in tough environments, those new audio mix features where you can reduce the noise and only have like audio come in being in frame, or give some voice enhancements like making it sound like you're in a sound-treated room, do help out a lot and can take unusable audio and make it passable.
Some of the wind noise, some of the background noise and things like that. Then there's also like a studio version where apparently it will make it sound like I'm in like a sound treated room, give me like a nice boomy voice and all that stuff.
Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, and at times it can sound way too over-processed to the point of being robotic. But if you're in well-managed conditions, like you would want to be anytime you're recording sound, it sounds good. The default microphones, the closer you get to them too with your mouth, even without all these audio processing tricks, makes your audio sound rich, deep, and booming. And for these past 2 weeks, I've been shooting a lot of video on the 16 Pro Max. And while it's not a huge upgrade from the 15 Pro's video, I am still just genuinely amazed how good video in general looks on iPhones, thanks to the addition of ProRes log video recording, which they added last year on the 15 Pro. But in terms of new features on the 16 Pro that do make a difference over last year, by far, my favorite is the new 4K 120 frames per second feature. One of the biggest weaknesses on older iPhones was the lack of high quality slow motion video, and now it is finally here with this new option, and it's a huge improvement over the softer 1080p options of the past. This, along with the iPhone's microphone upgrade and just the range of video options we have on modern day iPhones, especially on the Pro phones, make this phone so versatile and so flexible and much more complete as an all-in-one video solution, more than it has ever been before. And yes, there are specific photo improvements this year as well, probably more photo improvements than video improvements, with the main sensor now being able to capture more light. It's very rare that you ever see the night mode option pop up, and that's really funny because that was such a hyped feature on smartphones from like 5 years ago, and now you kind of don't need it. The camera sensor is just that much larger, it captures so much light, and now with options with like 48 megapixels of resolution in ProRAW, I can capture so much detail as well. I also like how much faster it is to shoot raw photos on the iPhone 16 Pro. It is much faster than the 15 Pro from last year. And in general, it's just really hard to take what I would call a bad photo on the iPhone 16 Pro. However, I have to be honest, even though I'm trying to shoot more raw photos these days, I do love what Apple did with their picture profiles this year. I think they call them photographic styles, or that's what they used to be called at least. But basically, these are default photo profiles that you can tweak in the camera app to change the default style of how your photos look. Now, these aren't filters, they're literally changing the color and tone processing of photos. So if you like a more cool look or a more vibrant look or a more dramatic look, or maybe you like a look with more of those golden hues, well, you can choose to shoot that. Or use this handy new slider to tweak the tone of these photos and the colors to your own specific liking. When I saw this feature at the event, I thought it was going to be very gimmicky, and it really hasn't been. I've been having a ton of fun experimenting with these new kind of styles and looks, but the reason I really like this feature on the 16 Pro compared to the older version is because you can shoot in any of these profiles and then literally edit the profile afterwards. So there's no risk of changing to a different profile. If you want to go back and get that standard mode with the default iPhone processing, you can do that at any time. You can even shoot a black and white photo, and then when you go to edit it, the iPhone still retains all the color information captured in that photo, so you can completely revert it back. So I've been using this feature more than I did in the past because now I don't have to fear losing the default iPhone processing, which I do generally like. But out of all these photographic styles I've been using, I've been selecting either amber or the gold tone setting. It looks really nice. It makes the photos look just a little bit warmer, gives it a little bit more pop. And I think that's like my favorite way to take iPhone photos right now. One area I thought I would be more impressed by, but kind of walked away a little mixed on, was the 48 megapixel sensor being added to the ultra wide angle camera. My main gripe with this is I don't think it added that much more detail to ultra wide shots in the standard mode, and it actually bins these photos down to 12 megapixels, not 24 megapixels like it does with the main 48 megapixel sensor. Now, yes, of course, if you set it to RAW, you can get the full 48 megapixel resolution, and then these ultra wide shots do look more sharp. But the main area where I was disappointed in was with macro mode. I figured with 48 megapixels of resolution in macro mode, you'd have just way crisper shots. But when you actually use that macro mode, even in RAW mode, it still makes those photos 12 megapixels. So you can't really crop in as much and get all that detail like I thought you might be able to. So I hope they change that in the future so it can get a full readout or maybe even a partial readout of that larger sensor and bring it down to 24 megapixels. I feel like that would be enough extra resolution to work with for more detailed macro shots. The 5x lens I don't have that much more to say about because, I mean, it's not that much different from the 15 Pro Max's 5x lens, which I was using last year. I feel like maybe it does do a little bit better in low light, but I really haven't done side-by-side scientific testing with it. But the thing I do have to say about the 5x lens is it is also on that smaller 16 Pro model, so it makes picking this big phone, which I don't really like the size of, an even more difficult decision. But I'm sticking with the big phone. I like the battery. I'm sticking with the big phone. But ultimately, I feel like Apple has done a lot here with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. It may not look like a complete refresh, but the A18 Pro chip is super powerful, the phone is super snappy, the camera button is useful, the displays are larger, the batteries are larger, the camera system is more competent and capable than ever before, and the iPhone in general is more versatile and complete as a whole. It may not be the most exciting or groundbreaking year in terms of a specific hardware feature, but all of these upgrades add up to an iPhone that makes it a better experience. It really feels similar to the iPhone 11 Pro, which didn't get too many hallmark features and got criticized for having a similar design to the XS, but on a whole was a really good phone. And in hindsight, people say the 11 Pro was one of the best iPhone batteries and one of the best iPhone experiences. I don't think that's been matched until right now with the new 16 Pro. But yeah, hardware, that's the upgrade here, right? But there's another upgrade coming, and we all know what's next. This could have been a much more exciting and perhaps an even groundbreaking launch for Apple if Apple Intelligence was ready to ship. But it isn't, and I can't review features that aren't here yet or features that are in beta. But still, the 16 Pro potentially has the chance to become something much more exciting than it is right now. And I guess we'll figure that out in the next few months or the next year. And I guess that's another video I can make for you guys, so I guess Apple's keeping me employed some way. Again, Apple doesn't employ me. They don't pay me. But I do make videos about Apple. So, it gives me some time to kill. But hopefully I didn't kill your time, and hopefully you found this video helpful, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a like. If you want to see more, make sure you're subscribed, especially when we get these updates for Apple Intelligence. I feel like that's going to make this an entirely new phone experience. And thank you all for watching again, and I'll catch you all next time. Hopefully with a little more intelligence. Are you smart yet? No.